Hi, I'm Vishal. Uh, Good morning, one and all. I'm from third year, Triple E branch. I'm here to explain about determinants of demand for green products. So, here, determinants of demand for green products. Here, rising consumers' ecological consciousness is in recent years has increased their willingness to pay for green products. OECD 2002b, OECD 2002a points out that 27% of consumers in OECD countries can be labeled green consumers due to their strong willingness to pay and strong environmental activism. 10% of these are green activists with high environmental activism but lower willingness to pay. The others are latent greens 40% or inactive 23%. In its 2005 paper on the effects of eco labeling schemes, OECD compiles several studies revealing greater consumer willingness to pay for eco-labeled products. The 2008 Eurobarometer shows that 75% of Europeans are ready to buy environmentally friendly products even if they cost a little bit more. However, only 17% of this declare having recently brought such products marked with an environmental label. European Commission 2008. A reason may be the inability of 42% of them to discriminate environmentally friendly products from other products with an eco label. Another reason can arise from the fact that some of them think that responsible consumption is synonymous with a lower consumption, like 75% of French people questioned by ethnicity 2008. The question of the determinants of demand for green products is thus particularly significant. In a standard in a standard microeconomic approach, the willingness to pay more for a green product than for a brown one reflects a higher marginal utility when buying a green product rather than a brown one. It also reveals the consumer's environmental preferences. However, there are several factors to take into account when such preferences. First of all, the individual decision making process can be influenced by psychological, moral, and cultural factors. Frey and Stutzer associate economic and psychological approaches in order to study environmental, moral, and motivation. They argue that individuals are driven by altruism, social norms, and reciprocal fairness, internalized norms related to high principles, inducing self evaluations, and intrinsic motivation, willingness to pursue an activity for the welfare it induces in itself. Berglund and Matti 2006 add that individual decisions depend on ethical values and beliefs, customs, culture, and several kinds of social, political, and moral values, and also on institutional settings, which are likely to shape such attitudes by encouraging or discouraging some behaviors and attitudes. Similarly, Tagler and Gracia Valinas 2007 show that political interest and political awareness are major determinants of the Spanish attitude towards preventing environmental damage. Here, individuals' economic behavior regarding environmental issues is also justified by their civic values. The representation of consumers' environmental preferences through their utility functions should also reflect more or less accurately these multiple non-economic determinants. Other important factors explaining pro-environment attitudes are individual socio-economic characteristics. Several studies reviewed by Togler and Garcia Valinas point out differences in preferences according to age, gender, marital status, occupational status, geography, and especially income and education. The consumer is indeed confronted with budget constraints that may limit expenditure, particularly on green products. The education level may also impact on consumer attitude in their knowledge of environmental issues and their treatment of eco information. The role of information diffusion and absorption has been clearly highlighted in studies dealing with eco labels. The eco labels are indeed an instrument used by firms and governments in order to raise awareness of the higher ecological quality of a given product with respect to unlabeled goods, since the environmental consequences of the production and consumption of a product are generally unobservable. The eco label is the only way for consumers to collect such information. Firms draw use eco labels to win market share thanks to a differentiation strategy, surfing the wave of consumers' ecological awareness. Government's goals are the improvement of the environment through a substitution of green for brown products. The success of such a policy depends on consumer reaction to this environmental information. OECD 2005 argues that consumers are often prepared to pay more for eco-labeled products and that the premium they are prepared to pay depends on their confidence in the certifying organization, their levels of education, their environmental involvement, and the type of additional information available. These results have been recently confirmed for greener vehicles by Telestial 2008 and for green electricity by Ekan Soderholm. Moral and social norms play also an important role in the electricity choices. Cochin and Moore 2007. The impact of seafood product eco-labeling on consumer behavior is an important issue. The state of the world fisheries and aquaculture is deeply worrying in spite of international regulation such as the conservation measures adopted for the European Common Fisheries policies and by the regional fisheries organizations or the FAO's Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries. According to the 2007 FAO report, about half of the world fisheries are fully exploited, 17% are overexploited, and 7% are depleted. It must be remembered that fishing has the distinctive feature of being a harvest economics. Since the since the marine resources remain renewable if they are harvested at a lower rate than they are naturally replenished. Fish eco-labeling may contribute to reaching a sustainable fish exploitation if producers changing their fishery management and consumers turn towards eco-friendly seafood. Several seafood eco-labels recently analyzed by Washington for the FAO has been developed by non-governmental organizations and a few retailers and seafood industry bodies. The Marine Stewardship Council Eco Label for Fisheries, created in 1997 by WWF, is the most well known and the extensive one. Procedures in light of FAO guidelines, it remains criticized for not incorporating the particular circumstances of developing countries and for not including the overall environmental impact of the life cycle of seafood products. Emphasizes that wild caught seafood not only have a direct effect and the fish stock but also on the overall marine ecosystem and the external environment. They call for the expansion of the criteria used by the MSC for eco-labeling and recommend the inclusion of energy use and chemicals. Similarly, the Swedish KRV label. Since 2005, the European Commission has been debating adopting its own label guidelines and taking into consideration other criteria than more ecological system. Furthermore, the most popular label, the MSC, only cover less than 1% of the global fish trade. So determinants of green demand. In this one, we provide overview of theoretical factors encouraging and discouraging green demand. Our analysis rests on the assumption that consumption of green products and demand for eco-labeling are two sorts of so-called green demand and have thus the same determinants. These factors may be classed into three categories: the intrinsic consumer motivation, consumer preference, Iago consumer constant. We do not seek here to develop an original theoretical model or encompassing all